Like I mentioned at the top, we've got Art Babbott. He's calling in from Flagstaff tonight. He's a former council member. He's, I believe, on the Coconino Board of County Board of Supervisors, former legislative candidate. But yeah, go ahead, Art. Give us what you got.
Great. Well, super appreciate the opportunity with Voter Choice Arizona here to share a little bit of perspectives as someone who sat on one side of the electoral, running for office, being in office as both a candidate for the legislature as well as 15 years in office, to share some perspectives on why I think ranked choice voting is just a really, really important strategy that Voter Choice is talking about and that our communities, our state, and our nation has to be talking about. I think there probably are few topics that are more important, quite frankly. I've always felt it's equally, if not more important, how we have our conversations than the actual conversations we have. And when we look at our political discourse and our conversations around the unbelievable problems that we have to face as communities and societies and the opportunities we need to bring, it really, really matters the structure on how we have those conversations. And so that's why ranked choice voting, I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight about my experience as at the state and local and county level with governance and political discourse, and why I think ranked choice voting and some of the other pieces like open primaries are really important to circle into our conversations, not only with our communities, but with our elected leadership as well. So just really quickly, a little bio about myself. I'm Art Babbott. I've been in Flag about 25, 28 years or so. I have a wife and daughter up here. I'm a small business owner up here for many, many years, and I served in electoral office, elected politics up here for about 15 years, 8 years as a county supervisor. And I was an elected independent county supervisor, one of just 3 in the state of Arizona. And that was important to me. It was important to me because I don't just vote for Democrats or Republicans. I don't believe just one good ideas come from one party or perspective. If I had that idea in my small business, my business would not survive. And I look at how we as a society have conversations, and I look at our economy, for example, which is based upon the marketplace of good ideas. Our society is based, and that economic economy in our society is based on competition, and that diversity of ideas that really makes us stronger. And when I then look at that same value and how that kind of parlays into our political system, boy, do we have an uninspiring, uncompetitive political system. And when I served as an independent on the Coconino County Board of Supervisors, to me, there was really value because I, just like my beliefs don't only go to Democrat or Republican or Libertarian, so too that sums up the majority of the constituencies. Very few people are kind of 100%, one way or no other way. And so I think when we, in our political discourse, try to simplify the world in terms of, and I'm going to go right to what someone told me in Payson, Arizona, when I was running for the state legislature. This nice woman came up to me and said, well, and I was running as an independent for Legislative District 6. She said, well, if you don't have a D or an R after your name, how do I know if I hate you or not? And that sums up exactly how we have our political conversations. And we've engendered a system where the easy way out is to go to your corner, lob a ton of political, rhetorical, partisan grenades into the middle of the room, and think we're solving problems. And it's been my belief after serving in office that the electorate is actually much smarter than most elected officials give them credit for. And many adjectives can be used to describe our current political system and our political discourse. Unfortunately, none of those adjectives are really positive. They're, dysfunctional, they're mean-spirited, they're hyper-partisan. But what people pay their elected officials to go do is theoretically to solve problems and create opportunities. And what we see in our current system, which is a partisan, partially open primary-driven system, is that system engenders the extremes at the expense of a broad swath of the middle, which is, in my experience, has been around 60% of the people are not purely Ds or Rs. I bleed a little bit libertarian. I bleed a little bit fiscal conservative. I bleed a fair amount progressive social liberal, And so we need to recognize that a political system that is based on kind of things being black and white is not serving us well. And I think until we get down to the causes and the conditions of why our political conversations are producing the outcomes they're producing, we're going to keep getting the exact same results. And one of the things that when I talk with folks about electoral reform, ranked choice voting, open primaries, one of the things I start out with is the risk of trying something different greater or less than the risk of continuing to do what we're doing? And I would argue when you look around and you see what our current system is producing, it's really hard to argue that taking a risk isn't a worthwhile and reasonable strategy. Yes, ranked choice voting, open primaries, and I'll talk a little bit about my feelings about those two in combination in a minute. Those are risks. They are becoming much less risky because what we've seen with so many citizens initiated and driven electoral reform pieces, whether it's in conservative Utah, conservative Alaska, liberal, progressive Vermont, Massachusetts, New York City, what we're seeing is that citizens are really driving those efforts. And that's the exact reason why Voter Choice Arizona is so important in the state of Arizona, because we have to have a tip to the spear of how we engage our communities in these conversations. So what I want out of my electoral system is not someone who agrees, not electing people who agree with me all the time. What I want is a competitive and vibrant electoral system that recognizes that diversity of ideas and perspectives actually serve our political long-term stability, don't inhibit it. And really, really, really important is I want a playing field where all voters and all candidates play the exact same set of rules. In Arizona, we have first-class voters, we have second-class voters. In Arizona, we have first-class candidates and second-class candidates. I am firmly a second-class candidate. In order for me as an independent to have gotten on the ballot for Legislative District 6, I had to get 4 times the signatures that Democrats or Republicans had to get. And I did that knowingly. I knew the statutes. I'm very well versed in the Arizona revised statutes. And it was important enough to me to run as an independent because that is how I kind of operate. In addition to that incredible discrepancy on even ballot access, political parties can bring essentially unlimited dark money resources to their candidates. Independent candidates have to account for every dollar spent and every dollar allocated, and every dollar of revenue brought in. And we all know the unbelievable disparity of those of us who are independents or choose to be unaffiliated. We get to pay for elections which we are legally prevented from participating in. If there was ever a taxation without representation argument, it would be that argument in the state of Arizona. And we continue to do this because you cannot expect the same folks who designed a statutory system to serve the interests of political parties to all of a sudden change and get us out of that system. That's why Voter Choice Arizona is so important, to be that tip of the spear for this conversation to move forward. So getting down to the causes and conditions, for me, is really why Voter Choice Arizona is so important and exciting, and why ranked choice voting and open primaries are are so important, because without that structural change, we're not going to get there. Is my belief. So that's the sad news is we're not going to get there without it. The good news is it is a movement, as we all are testing tonight, that is absolutely gaining momentum, gaining traction, because the risk of trying something different, we can see what we're getting, and not many of us like it. Quite frankly, I do want to get to one thing that Sean, though, mentioned in the survey, which is we should not be naive, don't take it the wrong way, to think there are not people who absolutely love the current system that we are getting, because they are strong interests. Some are parties, some are individuals, some are corporate entities, but there are very strong interests who are well served by a dysfunctional political system. And so I think it is really, really important that when we talk about those changes that ranked choice voting embodies, which is bringing in competition, requiring 50% +1 to be considered having the privilege of being a public servant and an elected officer, of reducing the spoiler effect. All those things produce outcomes which people are asking for. And so in my race for the Arizona legislature for Legislative District 6, which I came up shy by about, I think, 5 points on, it was very clear to me that Arizona has a lot of the attributes as a state and as a community, even in more conservative rural Arizona, of why people have an inherent and innate interest in supporting things like ranked choice voting. When I look at kind of the gold standard or the Cadillac version of electoral reform, I go to what Blake referenced occurred in Alaska with Proposition 2 this last November. And that was a comprehensive electoral reform package that combined campaign finance reform, incredibly important. It says everyone who gave $2,000 or more has to disclose the original source of that money. It combined campaign finance reform with open primaries and a top 4 ranked choice voting general election. When I look at that, I say that is the gold standard. Because that's how I feel does not mean that's the only way we as an organization can go. That's not the only vehicle. But what that does is it allows politicians, and I'll speak kind of on the politician side because that's where I spent most of my years, to take appropriate risks. Right now, there is no incentive. In fact, there is disincentives for you to take appropriate political risks and carve out your own space. And I would argue, whether you were a fan of Donald Trump's or not a fan of Donald Trump's, what ranked choice voting in Alaska did was allow Senator Murkowski, who is one of their 2 states, US senators from Alaska, to support impeachment, even though she is a moderate to conservative Republican, because she no longer feared of being out-primaried in a conventional primary system. So it allows our elected leaders to do what I think we want them to do, which is to take some risks outside. I want political parties part of our landscape. I think the ability for people to rally around philosophies and values that have meaning to them is incredibly important. I'm not an independent because I don't want political parties. I'm an independent because I like the buffet of politics. I take some from the libertarian side, some from the liberal side, and some from the conservative side. That's how many of us who operate businesses, aren't unidimensional. And so I think as ranked choice voting continues to become a more relevant topic because of what our current system is doing, Voter Choice Arizona has that incredible ability. And I'm a member. I want to encourage everyone to be donating members to Voter Choice Arizona. I'm also on the advisory board. But as we make that those decisions in the future on what strategies specific strategies, whether at the municipal level, whether at the state level, whether at the initiative level, and whether those are ranked choice voting only, whether those are ranked choice voting coupled with open primaries. We have to have convening organizations like this one to help educate and manage what is a really difficult conversation. And it's a difficult conversation because there are interests that we need to recognize, whether those are political party issues or municipality or clerk issues, county clerk who do the elections issues. And so, I think it's a very exciting time. If we get over some of the challenging times that we're in, it's a very exciting time to watch communities and states have conversations and move us past hyper-partisan political gridlock, which, yes, some people do get their benefits from, but most of us are profoundly frustrated with. And so, as an individual, I'm a big proponent of a more comprehensive approach of open primaries and campaign finance reform and ranked choice voting. But whether or not that is where this organization or the state chooses to go is irrelevant, because I'm going to just be a champion for what we decide to do as an organization in terms of moving this forward, because, the alternative is bleak. And that's why, we finally have something that is captivating Utah citizens, Alaska citizens, Maine citizens, Vermont citizens, all over. So with that, I just really appreciate the opportunity to share some perspectives, at least on the elected side of the fence, and really want to thank you all for engaging in a conversation that really, I think, is kind of a first things first conversation for our state, our communities, and our nation, quite frankly. And I'm happy to take any questions if folks have any.
Thank you so much for speaking, Art. If anyone, first of all, round of applause. There you go. And if anyone does have any questions, I would love to hear the answers. So feel free to either raise your hand, either the hand function or your physical hand, or just unmute and start talking.
And I'll also put up my email in case someone wants to email too.
Excellent. Well, look, if nobody else has any questions, I did have a quick question. So I know you said you ran as an independent because that was something that was important to you. And you came within 5 points of winning regardless. I take it that you think that if you either had ranked choice voting or if you were to have run as either a Democrat or Republican, you think you would have had a chance to make up those extra 5 points?
Well, so there were 4 of us in the race for a legislative House seat. So because we have an uncompetitive electoral system, we only had 4 candidates. Ranked choice voting would not probably have helped me out, because we would have gone straight, bypass that magic number of 2 people for 4 seats. But with that said, ranked choice voting allows, even though I had 15 years in office, I was still viewed as a spoiler candidate because I chose not to affiliate with a party. And so I had that was a piece that is a hard hill to overcome, to climb. And so I think that ranked choice voting, it's not about one election or one specific office. It is about a system where people feel empowered to fundamentally look at our electoral process differently. And that would have helped me immensely. And finally, I had been a registered Democrat at one point in my political career. And the answer is I could have run as a Democrat, but I would have been incredibly unhappy doing so, and I wouldn't have run as a Democrat. And so that was just me.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that answer. I saw we had John and then Marie, and then I think we'll have to hold any other questions till after the meeting if you have the time, Art.
Sure.
So go ahead, John.
I guess I want to push back a little bit about your comment that as an independent, you're kind of disenfranchised because you're not able to participate in a partisan primary. Since you've chosen to be an independent, why should you then have to have input over a group of people who have chosen to assemble in a First Amendment sense. And with that said, and I don't necessarily disagree, but if the issue is the primaries, then why don't we just eliminate the primaries like they've chosen to do in Utah? All right, thank you.
Yeah. So the real poster child for what I referenced, John, is the presidential preference election. And that is where by statute, independents cannot vote in the partisan. So I pay my share of fair taxes. As a business owner, I actually pay quite a bit of taxes, and I am prohibited by statute from participating in the presidential preference election. Parties want to go have their own primary. Wonderful. Don't make me pay for it and not have the ability to participate. I would ask for you to look at other examples where you get to pay, but by statute, you are prevented from ever receiving that benefit. I don't think there are many, if any, but so that's the nature of that. I pay for it. It should be accessible to me. That's different than the state political party primaries, which I pay for, and I can choose to vote in the Republican primary. So it's different. The presidential preference election is closed to independents and unaffiliated voters, period. So that's the kind of nature of that, why that crook is in my jaw is because it is taxation without representation. And it's because we don't treat all voters and all candidates with the same set of rules.
Thank you for that, Art. I hope that sort of addressed some of those questions, John. And if not, I would love to continue that conversation after the meeting if, once again, time permits. But for now, let's hear from Marie.
Hi, everybody.
Hi,
So my name
I'm
is
just wondering, and I'm kind of new to some of this discussion. If we had open primaries and choice voting, would there be an indicator of what party you affiliate if you wanted to do that? I assume from what you probably identify yourself as an independent might be actually a very popular move, but do you see that or just mixed with no party or affiliation?
So it was a little bit broken up, but I think what I understood is how would that open primary affect affiliation is what I think I heard with that. And I will tell you, as someone who traveled a huge rural district running for the House of Representatives this last electoral cycle, there are many, many Republicans who are registered Republicans who actually are libertarians, but because the Republican Party in 2016 in the state of Arizona basically cut the knees out off of the Libertarian Party because they didn't want the competition, they are affiliated even though they may not be kind of feeling like they are part of the Republican Party. Similarly, there are quite a few Green Party candidates who, because the Green Party has lost its status, have identified not only as independents, but as Green Party folks. So I believe open primaries, and I think, I can't remember if Sean or Blake mentioned this, that fear of kind of minor party status of open primaries, I would argue we do not have a thriving multi-party democratic system now. So I'm not sure fear of losing that is a powerful argument, quite frankly. I think it actually would empower people to identify with other political parties. Right now, it's the two major parties are the gatekeepers of our election. They are not just participants, they are the gatekeepers. That's not a moral condemnation, it's just the statutory fact. And from how I look at the statutes of Arizona. So I think open primaries would actually free up some space for some additional political affiliations for those who didn't want to be independent as I have chosen to be.
So you don't have a problem with people putting an L or R or a D or whatever G by their name?
Not at all.
To help the voter know more about them, correct?
Not absolutely, not at all. I think that gets back to what is your, what is your identity group that you are associated with. So I think that is how Alaska works as well.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much again, Art, and hopefully that answered your question, Marie. We do have to move on